What if everything you thought you knew was just the beginning? What if reality isn't what it seems and consciousness stretches far beyond the limits of our understanding? Join us as we journey into the unknown, seeking truth, wisdom, and connection beyond the veil. Welcome to Beyond Transcendence, where the mysteries of the universe unfold, one conversation at a time. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Beyond Transcendence. I'm your host as always, Josh Rutledge, and normally I would be joined by Deb Shakti, but Deb's is a little under the weather, and so she's going to miss out on this particular episode. If you're listening to this, watching this, please send her, a healing energy, Reiki, prayers, whatever your method is for helping people to kind of work through and get over the things that are going on for them. I'm sure she would welcome and appreciate those well wishes. So since you've just got me today and we don't have the back and forth conversation that Debs and I usually have for the podcast, I thought for this episode, it might be helpful to put out there for anybody who's having or has recently had we'll call it awakening events. You've seen a UFO, you've seen or had an experience with Bigfoot, ghosts. You recently discovered that you're being abducted by entities, or you have been in the past and you've recently discovered, whatever the case may be, you're on this kind of awakening journey, and you don't really know where to go from here. And so I thought this episode, what I might do is just go through some of the books that I have found helpful as I've gone through my awakening journey over the last almost 6 years. And so here in just a moment, I'll just kind of go through. I've got to categorize by UFOs, abduction, ghost, Sasquatch, just kind of general books that are beneficial to look at a wide range of the phenomena. And then lastly, some books that may be helpful because one of the things that tends to happen once you've had these occurrences, these experiences, is it's kind of like you're now tuned in to see things and experience things more frequently. And so the last two books on the list are ones that kind of help you protect yourself, learn how to protect yourself from having negative experiences or experiences that you might perceive as negative, and two, how to begin to expand and grow your own kind of psychic abilities that also tend to be tangentially enabled or turned on, or you become aware of them as a part of this kind of awakening process. So that's the purpose of today's podcast. Or anybody who's looking at this on YouTube, there are links in a full book list in the description. The links do go to an affiliate Amazon account. If you happen to click on the link and buy the book or whatever, that's great. But don't feel like you have to. It just it helps support me and the efforts that we do for this channel and this podcast. So, without further ado, let's jump into the list. So first item on the list, again, this pertains to the first grouping being UFOs. And it's not actually the first book that I read on the topic, but I do think it's a very helpful book. And I have read each one of the ones that are on this list, read/listened to it in audio form. But it is UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record by Leslie Kean. And Leslie Kean, if you're not familiar with that name, she wrote or was co-author for the article in 2017 from the New York Times that kind of broke open, if you will, the government's interest in UAP, the term used, effectively UFO, and how basically since the end of Blue Book, in 1969, the government has always said, no, we're not interested. We're not doing this anymore. But in all actuality, behind the scenes, there have been programs ongoing since then, just not open to or available for public consumption and review. And so Leslie Kean, along with Art Blumenthal and another writer that the name slips my tongue at the moment, but they went together to write that article in the New York Times again in 2017. Had that footage from the Navy, which a year later was confirmed as being actual legitimate footage. And basically, again, broke up in the kind of modern conversation around UFO, UAP, specifically as it relates to the government and what it is doing to understand the phenomena. So again, that book by Leslie Kean is phenomenal. Has a lot of testimony and details from credible witnesses. Has firsthand testimonies, as well as details from kind of declassified documents. The book is a little old. Things have, obviously continued to transpire since that book came out, but it's still very much worth reading and hearing about some of these things, if not, simply from a historical context perspective. Next up on the list is kind of related, but it's Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, an insider's account of the secret government UFO program, written by Colm Kelleher. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so this book is kind of think of it, although not the same author, I don't think they would compare the two, but kind of think of it as a continuation of either the book by Leslie Kean that I mentioned before, or the article that was written in the New York Times, because this book actually walks through basically how those programs that the New York Times article came to be, who kind of worked to put those programs in place, who worked to get funding. There's a lot of vague references to a contractor who was involved in these programs. My thought is that more than likely that contractor was Bigelow, Robert Bigelow. And in fact, in some of that book, The Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, it talks about Robert Bigelow's involvement at Skinwalker Ranch and the later sale of Skinwalker Ranch to Brendan Fugel. And again, if you're new to all this, then this may be, maybe you're drinking from a fire hose, and if so, I apologize. So maybe, bookmark this episode or come back and reference it once you're maybe read some of these and come back to it for more information. My situation, for those that don't know, I had my kind of awakening experience in August of 2019. And then I immediately started doing a podcast with my best friend, Stefan Gearhart, where it forced me to research a lot of topics. Our podcast in the beginning mainly focused on ghosts and that type of thing, but, branched out from there and eventually started covering the entirety of the phenomena, looking at it from a holistic perspective. So because of that, I've been forced, and although now I would say that I find it intriguing, to continually do research to find out what's out there, what are some new theories or ideas that I've previously not considered, and even looking at things that maybe would be considered really fringe, even from our community's perspective, to see how they may relate. So because of that, I've done a lot of investigating, I've done a lot of reading, watched a lot of documentaries, and so the product of me talking to you about this topic today is that 5 or so years of continued research and investigation. Next up on the list, again in the UFO category, is The UFO Experience, a Scientific Inquiry. Now, this book is written by J. Allen Hynek, and so if you're not familiar with who he is, but he was kind of the primary scientist. He's an astronomer that was assigned to Project Blue Book that was kind of conducted by the U.S. Air Force. And he went from being a kind of staunch skeptic to really being an advocate for a serious investigation and being and later in life, and being an experiencer himself. And so this book, I think, helps bridge the gap between that skeptic's point of view that he had originally to becoming more of a believer, or let's say a knower, because believing is something that you think to be true but cannot prove. He became a knower, I believe, later on in life. And this book helps to bridge that gap. All right, so on from UFO, moving over now into talking about abduction and alien abduction, entity abduction, however you want to talk about it there. And in this category, there are a total of 4 books. And these books, I think, are 4 of the best books on the topic. There are many books on the topic, a lot of them written from the point of view of the person experiencing, the abduction phenomena. But these are some good spread across those that are experiencing the phenomena and those that are investigating the phenomena. So first up on the list in the category of abduction is Communion, written by Whitley Strieber. I never know how to pronounce his last name, but and this book is his personal memoir, if you will, for his experiences with non-human entities, and his, I guess, coming to truth on that these things were happening, and what they really meant for him as an individual. And he's gone on to write several books on kind of in this vein of topic. And so this would be a really, this is obviously his first one out the door in this topic. And so it's an introduction to what he has to write and talk about in this regard. But I think, it certainly is a jumping off point if you wanted to go on and read his additional books. In fact, he has, I think, a new book that's recently come out that's kind of like a continuation of this, meant to kind of teach us about the things that when it comes to psychic abilities that we maybe really have access to, and these entities that are working with him would like us to know about it. So again, in the Communion book, it's his personal memoir, but it's a jumping off point for him, and he's written many books since. It was also made into a movie, but just like every other book that's made into a movie, the movie doesn't do the book entire justice. And so even if you've seen the movie Communion, I would still recommend that you read the book. Next up on the list is Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, written by John Mack. So John Mack he passed away several years ago, but he was a Harvard psychiatrist. And he really took a really open-minded approach, but still applying that kind of clinical background in reviewing the alien abduction phenomena. He interviewed just dozens of experiencers and really analyzed their stories from a psychological and kind of existential perspective. And rather than taking their experiences and trying to kind of apply a pathological reason to them to say that they're, they have a psychosis, let's say, he instead explores how these encounters, if legitimate and certainly feel legitimate for the person experiencing them, can really transform lives, kind of challenging those boundaries of consciousness and reality and the human experience itself. It's a fantastic book. This is one that I listened to on audiobook, but I have plans to pick it up as a hard copy as well, just so I can go through and highlight things that I think are important. The next one is called The Threat, Revealing the Secret Alien Agenda, and it's written by David Jacobs. This is a controversial book because it paints the alien abduction phenomena kind of in a negative way, looking at it as, as the book would imply, a threat to humanity, as opposed to how many in the abduction experience, culture or community eventually come to see their experiences as more positive or even neutral. I included it because I think it's good to look at, let's say, both sides of a topic. If you're always looking at one side, you'll never know what the other side of the coin, it needs to share with you. So if you read this book, go at it with an open mind. I would say that there's a possibility that the person who wrote this, David Jacobs, went into the phenomena with a pre-loaded kind of disposition on what they thought the phenomena was. And so the way that they conducted their investigation may have been to fit within that narrative. But you as the reader can read the contents, read the book in itself, and find out or make for yourself the determination if you feel that these are threats or if there's something else at play here. Also, falling outside of the need for something to always fit into one bucket or two buckets. It's very possible that these things, in some of these cases they're threats, and some of these cases they're positive, and some of these cases they're neutral, and some of the cases is completely something else. So don't, when you're reading any of the books that are on this list, if you read any of them, don't come down, on bottom line, go into each book open-minded, looking for an opportunity for yourself to learn something about the phenomena as it affects you and how it affects you and how you might be able to grow from that situation. Next up on the list is The Custodians, Beyond Abduction. This is written by Dolores Cannon. If you're not familiar with who Dolores Cannon is, she's a she's been doing hypnosis for a long time. If Debs were on the call, Debs were on the podcast, we would be talking about how it's Dolores Cannon developed her technique at the same time that Debs developed her quantum hypnosis technique. The two had no knowledge of each other at the time. And so it's just a real interesting, where the universe sees a need, they influence and they inform people to help fill that need, regardless of if somebody else has already done it or not. So Dolores Cannon does do similar work within the vein of quantum hypnosis, although not exactly the same. And so with her work, she started out talking with people, really thinking about more or less, past lives, past human lives. But in her work, she began to get people talking about past non-human lives. Some cases is rocks or trees or the air, a cloud. But then she also became, aware of situations where past lives were of non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial, whatever the word is that you want to use there, ultra-dimensional beings, etc. And so her books, which she has a lot of them, are generally a collection of these hypnosis sessions that have been transcribed and put into book format. So again, they're just like in the book for John Mack, where he interviewed experiencers and then transcribed their experiences into the book. It's a similar situation, meant for you to kind of listen to and draw your own conclusions based on the kind of overwhelming evidence that people are providing in this book. All right, next up on the list, we get into the topic of ghosts. And so there's only two books in this particular category, only because there's a plethora out there and it's really hard to pick just one. A lot of people, though, I will say, that look at the ghost or spirit phenomena sometimes overlay their religious beliefs before looking into the phenomena. And so I tried to pick two books that take more of a scientific approach to the topic. And so trying to look at it again with an open mind, not preloading any type of thoughts or insights that may skew how you understand or receive the information. So first up on the list for ghosts is Ghost Hunters, William James and the Search for Scientific Proof of Life After Death. That's a long title. It's written by Deborah Bloom. And it's a look at the 19th century efforts of respected scientists like William James to study the spiritualist phenomenon through very kind of rigorous and scientific methods. It has, a very engaging narrative. There are some bigger technological or scientific terms, but it's really easy to read and follow along with. And it also talks about kind of the formation of the Society for Psychical Research, and really the tensions that arose between faith and science and belief. It's a really good blend of kind of the historical biography of the topic and that early paranormal investigation. Next up after that is Surviving Death. A journalist investigates evidence for an afterlife. This again is written by Leslie Kean. And this is actually, if you have, I believe it's on Netflix. There's a little mini series based off of this that's on Netflix where they talk to and interview a lot of the people that were also covered in the book. But again, if you've just watched the mini series and not read the book, you're missing out. And so basically, Leslie Kean and examines a wide range of kind of evidence that supports the possibility of life after death. She talks to and hears from near-death experiences, talks to and understands like children who have had past life memories in this life, mediumship, even looking into scientific research around the topic as well. It's again written from a journalist, so it's balanced, it's investigative, and the book presents testimonies from credible sources and researchers, really challenging that mainstream skepticism while staying rooted in that inquiry rather than the sensationalism of the topic. All right, next up on the list, we're in the Sasquatch category. And there are 2 books in this category as well. Again, there's a lot of books out there about it. People tend to come down different ways. Some people think it's an animal. Some people think that it's something else. So these 2 books, I think, provide, again, kind of more of that scientific review of what the possibilities could be. So first up on the list is Sasquatch, Legend Meets Science by Dr. Jeff Meldrum. And this is written by, Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum is a professor of anatomy and anthropology, and his book really offers kind of a serious scientific evaluation of the Sasquatch phenomena. He reviews footprint evidence, hair samples, sightings, biomechanical feasibility, really taking a look at that kind of academic rigor that is necessary to review the subject, and then instead of just kind of usually being dismissed as folklore. And it's really, again, kind of that open-minded look at Sasquatch, or Bigfoot as it's most commonly referred to as. Next up is The Bigfoot Book, the Encyclopedia of Sasquatch, Yeti, and Cryptid Primates, written by Nick Redfern. This is a very thorough reference guide for everything Bigfoot and beyond. Nick Redfern, he does an excellent job of cataloging sightings, theories, personalities, cultural representations of just various cryptids, primates, etc. from around the world. It really is an ideal book for beginners, but also I'm sure it has information in it that even enthusiasts will get something new from it. It pulls information from folklore, does some research, pop culture, and then basically puts it all together in a very, fascinating compendium. In the next category, we have general. So in this category, these are books that in my personal opinion, are just really good books to read. They cover a wide range of the phenomena in itself. And, they're going to have UFOs and ghosts and cryptids and psychic events and etc. So it's just a really good all-over book. First up is Hunt for the Skinwalker. So this is different. Is written by Colm, Kelleher, and George Knapp. This is different from Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, but similar in that it looks at the bizarre events that happen at Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. You may be familiar. If you're not, there's a show on History Channel also based around the events at Skinwalker Ranch. It's very good. If you have options or opportunities to check it out, you should. But they have UFOs and cryptids, poltergeists, and all kinds of other anomalies that are kind of occurring and have been occurring at the ranch for decades. And this book looks at, firsthand research, interviews, scientific monitoring, and really presents a unique convergence of high strangeness that defies that easy explanation, and really making you think about what could be going on there and why all this anomalous phenomena. Next up on the list is The Mothman Prophecies, A True Story by John Keel. This is another one that if you've only ever seen the movie The Mothman Prophecies, you're missing out. In my opinion, the movie The Mothman Prophecies covers the last two chapters of the book. It is, investigative journalism. It's metaphysical mystery. John Keel does an excellent job of exploring kind of the surreal events that surrounded the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia during the 1960s. It's got UFOs, men in black, prophetic visions. It really offers that classic portrayal of the window area, which is just a geographical area where a lot of phenomena happens a lot. And like I said, the last two chapters of the book really is what the movie covers, but you're missing out if you haven't read the book. Next up is Passport to Magonia, From Folklore to Flying Saucers. Now, this is written by Jacques Vallée. And if you're not familiar with Jacques Vallée, but you may be familiar with the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, in that movie, the person who's from France, who has to have a lot of things translated, that character was based on Jacques Vallée. So Jacques Vallée has been around as an investigator for a long time, and he is a computer scientist, a ufologist. And he basically draws a lot of parallels between modern UFO encounters and ancient folklore in this book, suggesting that these phenomena may be a part of a timeless kind of shape-shifting presence. It reframes UFOs not as technological visits from outer space, but as manifestations of something more interdimensional and mythological, really challenging that extraterrestrial hypothesis. All right, we're finally down to the final two books on the list. Again, these fall into the category of preparedness. And this is just, again, you've had this experience, your eyes, your mind, your third eye is open, how to best protect yourself and grow in these, new abilities that you probably are going to become aware of. So the first up, both books are written by an author named Judy Hall. The first one is The Art of Psychic Protection, and it's a practical, kind of spiritual guide that helps the readers protect themselves from psychic disturbances, energy vampires, which are a thing, hauntings, spiritual interference. It uses, crystals and affirmations and visualization techniques to really help, either beginners or even advanced practitioners to establish energetic boundaries, cleanse the spaces that they work in and live in, and maintain emotional and spiritual well-being. It was a book that was recommended to me when I first began, my awakening journey by my good friends, and it is one that I go back to regularly to make sure that I'm using everything that's available to me. The last book on the list is Judy Hall's book of psychic development. And as the title would, suggest, it's all about how to expand your perceptions and refine your inner guidance and connect with those unseen realms. Like I said, one of the side effects or byproducts of having an experience with the phenomena is that you'll begin to become aware of these different things, these different gifts that you have, and these different abilities that you have. And when you become aware, it is easier for you to understand them and let's say, incorporate them into your daily life. And so this book, kind of helps to serve as a, practical and comprehensive guide to exploring what these gifts are, how to practice them, and really the research that supports the idea that there is more to life than what the five senses can perceive. And the book gets into all kinds of things such as the Akashic Record. Really it just includes practical exercises that really accompany each section to help you refine your sixth sense and build upon your, existing sensitivity. More than likely, everyone listening to this or watching this already has a strong sixth sense. It just happens without you knowing it or realizing it. But having these experiences, now all of a sudden, you'll start to realize that things happen. Maybe before you would have dismissed it as, a coincidence or happenstance, but now you'll start to wonder if, in all actuality, if these things are not truly, somehow you're affecting them or influencing things that are happening. So anyways, that completes the list. I hope that, those that watched or listened will benefit from this. Like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's links in the description for each one of the books. And as a reminder, they are associate links. If you do click on it and make a purchase, I do get a small commission, but it costs you nothing other than buying a book you're already going to buy anyway. So thank you again for watching and for listening. And next time, in 2 weeks or so, or 2 weeks out, we'll have hopefully Deb's back on and talking about the next episode. If you found this beneficial, please share it, like it, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to be able to share this information and other related information with you in the future. All right. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you soon.